Welcome to WE21. This is the world's largest conference for women engineers. And one of the great things about engineers is that they take challenges and turn them into opportunities. And I urge you to do exactly that this year. While I wish that we were here live for this panel, the challenge of connecting virtually is also an opportunity to connect and network with more people than ever. So I invite and challenge you to find the opportunities to chat with your peers during our presentation. I know that, I've already made some amazing connections at SWE in the past, and hopefully all of you will as well. So now let's go ahead and talk about women in esports and introduce our panel, Game Changers, Women Who Are Redefining the Esports Industry. So I work as an esports host, and that can cover a variety of different things, but primarily the main two things that I've been doing the last few years are doing the post-match interviews for the Call of Duty League, as well as hosting a segment for GameStop TV. And I'm freelance, so I just kind of do basically anything and everything. And then I'll just kind of go down the line, I guess, in the order that I see your lovely faces on my screen. So Sierra, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you for joining us, everybody. My name is Sierra Reed. I am an esports program manager at Intel. So my day-to-day role right now is actually across two different programs, one in the education space called Intel Inspires, looking at building the recruitment pipeline for high schoolers going into collegiate esports. And then my other program is actually super cool. It's in conjunction with the Olympics, so bringing esports to the global stage. And we just finished Intel World Open Tokyo, and we're just continuing to work on that.
Sweet, and I can't wait to hear more about your career later on. Dominique, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Dominique Jalino. I am a client operations manager with Esports Engine, which is a live event and esports program production company. In my last 8 years in esports, I've also been a caster for the Call of Duty esports community. I was the founding general manager for the Toronto Ultra, which is one of the franchises in the Call of Duty League. I've also worked with Overwatch League, and I've also done technical recruitment across various Fortune 500 companies.
Awesome. And Esports Engine is amazing, so I'm definitely excited to hear more about that. Kat, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kat Tompkins, and I am on the public relations team for ASUS, handling product launches with tech and gaming media for computer components, displays, peripherals, and networking categories. As a secondary role, I assist with growing esports programs within collegiate and K-12, and as well as assisting them and providing them with emerging technologies. I'm actually also currently a second-year master's student at California State University Long Beach, and I am the current president of the Cal State Long Beach esports program.
Awesome. And then finally, Helena.
Awesome. Hey, I'm Helena Malik. My gamer tag is Blonde Venom. I work as the director of content at efuse, which is a gaming social media platform, and we also host a ton of gaming events and esports events. I got my career back in Call of Duty, but after college went to the Cleveland Cavaliers NBA franchise to help them start up their esports franchise called Cavs Legion, and quickly moved over to efuse this year.
Sweet. Thank you, Helena. And again, efuse, an amazing company I've worked with before, and I love Ohio, living here myself, so definitely excited to get into more of that. So our first question is going to ask everyone to talk a little bit about how you got into your career. Was it something that you wanted to do or something you kind of fell into, and how did you get to where you are today? I think I'll let each of you answer, and then I'll kind of give my input at the end, and then before we move on to the next question. So Sierra, please start us off.
Yeah, so I've been at Intel now for 6 years, and actually joined after a internship that I had in college. And as a kid growing up, I actually started playing video games in preschool, of all places. So Crash Bandicoot, Putt-Putt, the fish game, way back in the day. And always had a love of gaming. I absolutely love world-building games. Like Zoo Tycoon is my absolute jam. I will forever love that game. But never really knew that could be a career in any sort of way, but I knew I liked technology. And so I went to a bunch of computer camps. In school, I studied computer engineering, business, and entrepreneurship. So I kind of graduated with this multidisciplinary degree and realized in college and through my internship that I absolutely loved technical marketing and this idea of understanding something that's technical, but being able to work with people and customers and communicate that. So my career actually started at Intel in the product marketing space, and by happenstance, the role that I was coming in to fill post-graduation was specifically for a tool that's used to optimize graphic-intensive applications on a PC, which are games. So I actually came into the gaming space that way on the game dev side, and was in that role for 2 years. Absolutely loved it. That's why I learned everything that I know about gaming in terms of an industry, opportunities, how games are created from one person at a home studio all the way to AAA titles, and really grew my love of the industry in that space, and knew pretty early on that there was no other industry I wanted to work in. I was going to stay within gaming. And then through that, I also started attending a lot of events and going to a lot of esports events. And that's when my program management kind of side of my career really started to develop. So I took on a lot of projects, and specifically programs that needed a little extra operational help. And then from there, that opened up opportunities within the esports space within our teams here at Intel. And being given the Olympics was probably a huge highlight of my career, in getting to work on esports in association with what Intel's doing at the Olympics. And pulling off that program during a pandemic after a year postponement was definitely a career highlight.
That's awesome. And it's so great that you grew up playing games and, you know, you kind of went the slightly more mainstream route and then found your way into gaming sort of by happenstance, even though you love it. So that's really, really cool to hear. Dominique, please share your story.
Yeah, so I got into esports and gaming, like probably everyone else here. I played games at an early age, but I never expected it to be a full career. In university, I was preparing to go to law school, and during university, this was around 2012, was really when Twitch was starting to take off, and I was a residence advisor. I was definitely the one that was like screaming in pub lobbies in COD from my room, and my residents used to make fun of me for it. And my friend introduced me to Twitch one day as a way to watch pros and other people get better. And in my head, I was thinking, like, pros, what are you talking about? And so, of course, then the first time you see Twitch, you go down the rabbit hole of like, wow, look at all this gameplay, and look at all these people, and you quickly learn about communities. So I found out about the Call of Duty community that way, and MLG was hosting an open event and streaming their qualifiers. And I saw this all-female team, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to reach out and see if they'd be interested in like having me as a team manager. I had helped with like acquiring sponsorship dollars for projects I'd worked on, and I had some good experience like helping teams collaborate, but I obviously never done that in the context of esports or sports. And they brought me on, and I later networked my way into a casting position after I left the manager role. When I took a step back from that and got into technical recruitment, I ended up at Activision just through my experience working with Call of Duty, and ever since then I've just continued to work with game publishers and developers because I realized that I couldn't go back to regular tech, that I loved being able to apply the skills and experience that I had with an area that I love. And specifically, I got into team operations and later program operations in the last few years because I just happened to be surrounded by great mentors who said, hey, you have this really interesting skill or this really cool knowledge that might be helpful in this other area of our business. And so I think that's where some of my networking pieces from my recruiting days came in was even though I didn't see that next part in me, I just knew that I wanted to keep learning and doing something different. And I happened to be in spaces that supported that with people who supported that.
I'm so glad that you focused a lot on the importance of networking, because that's something that it's so crucial, first of all, I think, particularly for women working in esports and gaming. And it's something we're going to talk more about later on today because there's so much knowledge to be had there. So next up, Kat, if you won't mind sharing your story.
Yeah, sure. So I started off in collegiate esports around 2013 as one of the original members of the club at California State University, Long Beach. During that time, it was a very grassroots effort, just making sure that, it was an effort where everyone was able to form this very knit community, like very tight-knit community. This was before we started having companies, like ASUS or like Intel come into the mainstream. This was before these esports teams like TSM and Cloud9 became so big. It was a time where everyone was there basically to, just network with each other and, be there for the love of gaming. And then a few years later, we started hosting events on campus, and I started getting involved with other companies, that would sponsor our events. And I happened to land a job at one of those companies and make my way into the tech industry. In terms of my career, I've always wanted to be in somewhat a public relations, journalism, or marketing type of role. And I've just been continuing that ever since. However, me being involved with tech and gaming started to come around during college when I was a part of that Esports association. And since then, just realizing how I've forged my career path through college, it made me realize that I wanted to do the same for others as well. So that's why I've been continuing to to really forge paths for others within the collegiate and K through 12 space ever since.
All right, Kat, thank you so much. And then finally, Helena, if you don't mind sharing your story.
Hey, I'm Helena Malik again. I got my start also playing Call of Duty, similar to Dom's story, but I was never as good as Dom, where I would play Call of Duty at this local LAN center in Pittsburgh, and I would beg this guy for a job, and eventually transferred free play at the gaming cafe for like marketing services. So I did their flyers and helped them upkeep their website. And they would have these Call of Duty tournaments at this LAN center once a month. And I participated in those, played with boys, with girls, against guys. It didn't matter who you were, just as long as you were there to compete. And we eventually heard of this event, MLG Columbus, and we were encouraged by our LAN center to go represent the LAN center at the MLG event. So we picked, the best 4 guys and gals, and got in our cars and drove to represent our little local LAN center. And the rest was kind of history in terms of a competitive career for me. It was a ton of fun to compete in different female leagues and co-ed leagues like on the MLG circuit. And I eventually played for a team called Panda Gaming, which had a professional team in Call of Duty. And I came to a point in my college career where I could, either continue my degree or try to keep competing, which I was never that good to keep competing. So the decision was very easy to go and get my college degree. So I worked pro bono at first for Panda Gaming in their marketing department, and eventually, worked my way up to earn my keep. And then out of college, I was hired by the Cleveland Cavaliers NBA team to help start their esports franchise. So I led their social marketing and content efforts for about 3.5 years, up until I took the role at efuse, which has been incredible. And what we do here at efuse is, one, it's a social media platform for gamers to get linked to opportunities. So if you're a high school student looking for a collegiate scholarship in gaming, or if you're, in college and looking for a gaming career, efuse would be, the place to be and the place to go to. And we also do virtual events. So we do Call of Duty tournaments, Fortnite tournaments, Apex Legends tournaments and events. And I help, direct our content team, both video content and written content. Which is a ton of fun. Couldn't ask for anything more to be in the industry that I love.
All right, and thank you, Helena. All right, and then I'll go ahead and just share my kind of quick journey to how I got to where I am now and how I got into esports. So like most of these other ladies, or all these other ladies rather, I grew up playing video games. And I also, like some of them, I wanted to work in gaming from a very young age, but I didn't really know kind of what I wanted to do. And there's that saying, you have to see it to be it, or something like that. And I just kind of didn't really know like what career opportunities there were out there in gaming and esports, or what I want to do. So I ended up majoring in computer science when I got to college, figuring maybe I could try to get into game development, or at the very least, I would be able to have a job to support myself while I worked on my true passion of trying to get a job in the game industry. And while I was in college, I discovered the IGN Daily Fix with Jessica Chobot, and that was kind of my moment of like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be a host. I want to present gaming news and such. So after college, I started a YouTube channel and kind of taught myself how to host, sort of worked my way up from there, got a job hosting for Curse, worked there for about 1.5 years, and while I was there, is when I discovered esports and wanted to switch from doing kind of pre-recorded gaming content into doing live broadcasts and like competitive gaming esports content. So I signed with an agency, Character Select Agency, who I'm still with. They're the best in the business. And then they've been kind of steadily getting me gigs from there. So it's been a journey, but it's been a lot of fun. And I think that my own story kind of feeds into the next question that I'm going to ask our panelists, which is talking about the career opportunities that there are, especially for women in each of our areas of expertise. Because again, I just kind of didn't know what was out there or what I specifically wanted to do. So Dominique, we'll start with you. What career opportunities do you see coming up for women in gaming and esports?
I mean, the one that naturally comes to mind is on the player side of things. As Helena mentioned, historically we've seen more grassroots opportunities for female, or even for athletes who don't identify as male, right? I think there's a really big opportunity for for non-binary folks and for non-traditional identities to still be an important part of esports. I think on camera, folks like yourself, people that I've looked up to for a long time, are really important, because if we don't have people that we can look up to, then how do we see and know and believe that there are opportunities for us? And I think the other one as well is probably leadership in esports. So not just visible leadership roles, but I think in particular, senior level and executive level. For example, I think of organizations like Evil Geniuses. Their CEO is a woman. FlyQuest, which is a franchise in LCS, same thing. You have executive leadership with groups like Rogue, who have Call of Duty League and LEC franchises. Having more folks in senior levels of leadership means that you hopefully have a trickle-down effect within the business that then spreads to other opportunities elsewhere in the business, right? Versus being pigeonholed into more historically female functions like marketing, finance, HR, etc.
Great answer. Kat, I believe you're up next.
I think within the past few years, I've been seeing incredible growth within the gaming tech industry. Companies like Intel, Corsair, as well as competitive esports teams like Evil Geniuses, TSM, C9, everyone's made significant impacts and advancements towards providing valuable internship and mentorship opportunities for both BIPOC and women, and everyone seeking to pursue career goals within that field. The fields of tech and gaming, I think, have become a little more diversified in the sense that a student that wants to pursue an HR career can pursue an HR role, or a new grad looking to get into data analytics can seek a role within these gaming and esports companies. And I think within the next few years, especially post-COVID, I see these opportunities continuing to grow. I believe that we'll start to see more growth in terms of providing cohort-based / collaborative internship models for students. And I think we're going to start seeing a more diversified list of available positions across STEM, operations, and marketing-based roles.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, because as you know, Dominique and I kind of both mentioned, a lot of times you just don't know what it is you can do if you have to be it to see it, as I said before. So that's really cool to see that there are so many more programs that are kind of being created specifically for women to encourage more women and young girls to get involved in gaming and esports as a career. Helena, you're next.
Absolutely. I would agree wholeheartedly with Dom here. I think there's a lot of opportunity for women to be competitive players. Especially now where you see tournaments, that are all women or co-ed or what have you, that are large prize pools. I think there's a lot more opportunity to get involved in these types of tournaments. And not only that, but we've seen a lot of professional Call of Duty teams or CDL teams that have been signing, women streamers, and competitive players. And once one team does it or one organization does it, they all do it. So it really takes that pioneer to sort of light that fire and spread it. So not only Call of Duty, but now we need other leagues and other titles to sort of step up to the plate and grow the scene.
Absolutely. And then finally, Sierra.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that that everybody has said so far, and I think from the position that I have is very unique in that I work for just a general tech company, and Intel is in more than just esports and gaming. You know, we're across multiple forms of technology, but there's a lot of back end roles or roles that aren't as visible as, you know, a player, a coach, and while we definitely need representation there, we also need representation in the games that are being created. You know, thankfully, a lot of progress has been made over the past 2 to 5 years. We're finally starting to see esports heroes that are women, non-binary, you know, multi-races, and finally having representation at that level too. Again, it kind of goes back to like, if you don't see yourself or someone like you in that type of role, then how would you know that you could go do that too? So a lot of representation and still a lot more to be done there. And then especially within the companies that really support esports from the grounds up. So the game publishers, companies like Intel, companies like ESL who are doing a lot of the production side, you know, Helena working at efuse. I know a lot of you, also working within, you know, tech companies and stuff too, that make all of this happen and, create the industry from the grounds up, because we are just added representation in those conversations, creating the experiences for the gamers who are out there. And gamers today, depending on how you look across devices, are actually either 50-50 split between genders or majority female. Most people don't realize that because we only see gamers as, you know, PC gamers or console gamers. Mobile gaming is a huge opportunity space within gaming, also has a lot more representation, both in the characters, the content, and is a lot more accessible for some gamers too. So there's just, I mean, this industry has changed. It changes daily. It changes hourly. I think we could all probably agree on that. So if you have a passion for this space, there will be an opportunity that meets that passion. If it's not there today, it'll be there tomorrow. Just kind of stick with it, continue to look at, you know, the companies. My role is not what it is or what I've been 2 years ago. I mean, Helena, you work for a startup. I think a lot of us work for kind of emerging forms of tech and innovation within the esports space.
Sierra, thank you so much for talking so much about representation, why it matters so much, and also for bringing up that statistic about how half of gamers are actually women. And I feel like what always gets brought up when somebody mentions that statistic, there's always someone that has to try to gatekeep and go, oh, well, it's mobile gaming, so it doesn't count. You know, women just play cell phone games or whatever, but it does count. It's all gaming. Half of gamers are women, so it's about time we show up in this industry. And then I guess to answer the question from my sort of slice of the industry, which is doing on-camera work, doing hosting and stuff, I've noticed more and more opportunities for women there, just in terms of past being the token female on the broadcast. We're now seeing multiple women on broadcast, which I think is so heartening to see. In the past, you would see a lot of talent announcements for esports events that would be just entirely comprised of men. And it's so cool then to see the next step when they started hiring women, but it would be a woman on each broadcast, if any. And now there's multiple women. I've worked on broadcasts that have happened to be more women than men, or have happened to be all women that weren't specifically setting out to be all women events. I've done some of those too, and those are fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I love, you know, casting and hosting those all women's events, but it's also cool when there are multiple women in a, you know, traditional mixed gender sort of talent lineup. I know Overwatch League, for instance, has multiple women. Call of Duty League for the past few years had multiple women on the broadcast. So really cool to see. So our next question, I know everyone here, I believe, it sounds like has at least some sort of technical background. I know, you know, Sierra and I have the computer thing in common, and all the other ladies also have some sort of tech going on in their background as well. So what are the commonalities that we see in terms of maybe some of the challenges facing women trying to enter esports, or some of the barriers to entry that you also see in more traditional tech industries and roles? And Dominique, we can start with you for this one.
A lot of the challenges that are facing women in tech are very similar to the challenges women face in esports, because esports is a natural offshoot of tech, right? Esports is a very specialized product or niche area within gaming. Gaming naturally developed as an offshoot of tech, and so you really saw this residual effect from that industry. I think it's also important to note that esports does also have this very natural overlap with entertainment, particularly in the last few years with the way it's been approached with things like franchise leagues, for example, and some of the big partners coming in. And entertainment is also another industry that has historically been very male with a lot of the same challenges as tech. So when you have two industries with very similar challenges, as a result, you're almost doubling up on the problem in a way within esports, and it's created this very insular environment versus if you had a situation where at least if one industry was a bit more diverse, then it would be easier to bring in some of those new ideas and diversity to help change the space. I think the space is naturally evolving, similar to what we're seeing in tech and even in entertainment. But we also have to remember that esports is just a very new industry, right? Even the idea of esports as an industry itself is very new. Like when I think back to when I first got into esports in 2013, like I said, I was a kid playing out of my college dorm room. And the only people we thought made money out of it were pros. And now I make enough money off of it that I've moved across the ocean and my parents no longer ask me or worry about my finances. So, it's very encouraging.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Great answer. We'll go ahead and move on to Helena.
There's definitely a lot of similarities, I think, between the two fields, especially it being, men dominated. I think, there's a lot of misconceptions about, younger women in college, women right out of college, where, some hiring managers might not take them as seriously. And I definitely, sort of felt that in the sports world. I was very lucky that the Cavs picked me up, where the Cavs had women leadership and had men who were allies who liked to hire women, and was very lucky in that regard. But I can definitely see how that is not the case in other sports franchises and in other tech-related fields, in other startups, and especially here at efuse. Now we're trying to make sure our hires are diverse, and it's incredibly important. But because of that sort of like male barrier to entry, where it's a little bit buddy, is very similar in all of these male-dominated fields. But I think, women are breaking through, that ceiling day by day, and there's more women hires now in esports than there ever was, and I know that there will be more coming tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and just making sure that, us in this room, everybody watching is a part of that conversation and helping to take that step forward. So then, I always have to reflect and think, okay, how can I make an impact when I'm hiring for my team? And how can I make an impact if, Sierra is hiring, and can I give her some recommendations? So it's all about that day-by-day impact and trying not to think about that big stressful picture, but what can we do today and this week that can make that difference?
Thank you, Helena. One thing that I really liked that you and Dominique both touched on is kind of, being able to make a difference. And I think that hopefully the next generation of women entering esports and gaming won't necessarily have to face some of the same challenges and everything that we did. But let's also hear from Sierra.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have a unique perspective in that I actually started more on the tech side and then kind of came into esports and gaming. And I think there's unfortunately a lot of commonalities, though I think in that there's a lot of, hope in that things are changing over time. I mean, in college, I was told, wow, it's impressive you're majoring in computer engineering. And I was like, why? Oh, because you're a girl. Great. So unfortunately, there was like a little bit of that being a computer engineer, or, the idea that I only got the job opportunities in the internships that I did because of my gender, not because of, my extensive resume and my experience and everything else that I had going for me. And I think unfortunately, there still is a little bit of that in the gaming and esports space, especially when it comes to imposter syndrome, which I know is a very overused term, but it's extremely accurate. And I think it's something that unfortunately a lot of women in particular identify with, especially when we don't see people like us up at the top or in very visible roles. There is that doubt that starts to come in of like, am I really capable of being here? Do I deserve to be here? And one of the ways I see that cropping up a lot within the gaming and esports space is kind of just what we talked about a little bit earlier. This idea that if you like a certain type of game, like I said earlier, Zoo Tycoon, I'm not a real gamer. And it's like, well, I wasn't aware that there was, a definition of gamer that included certain games and excluded other types of games. So I think there's a bit of almost acceptance and embracing of all the different types of gaming that exist, the types of game people like to play. You know, you may love a certain type of game in terms of competition, but actually play a different game at home with your family. And that's the amazing thing about gaming now is it's entertainment, it's culture, it's social interaction, it's friendship, and its connection, and just continuing to like lose some of that imposter syndrome in whatever way that you game, whatever way you compete. Like, we want that in this space. We want that in this industry. We want your perspective. And then in having that, we'll continue to just build it, you know, kind of from the ground up, as we have people with diverse backgrounds, diverse experience, diverse love of games, coming into this industry, and just continuing to make it more inclusive across the board.
So, Sierra brought up this idea that there are almost tiers, we'll call it, to the idea of like fandom or games or platforms or what have you. I've actually worked in mobile games. So before I became the general manager for Toronto Ultra, I was a technical recruiter at a large mobile game studio in Canada for about a year and a half. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much money is in mobile games. And just because it's on a mobile phone doesn't make it any less competitive or even just valuable as a game. You know, in my current role with Esports Engine, the account I run is Supercell, which is one of the biggest mobile game companies in the world. When I was at my old studio, that was the first time I think I fully saw behind the curtain of mobile, and just some of the numbers that you see that people are willing to spend are staggering. You know, the idea of like loot boxes and even I would say microtransactions, right? Microtransactions came from mobile because mobile opens up this whole new space and demographic of people who perhaps didn't identify as a gamer before. And that ultimately is a new way for people to get into esports, right? It's no different than us playing Mario as a kid, right? Or like you said, like Crash Bandicoot or Zoo Tycoon. Like, at the end of the day, it's still getting people in the door, and I think assigning these tiers, you know, it devalues your experience, which isn't fair to you as a person. Even within esports, we see that, right? Like, there's this idea of like S tier esports of like CS:GO, League of Legends, you know, Dota, and then, you know, depending on who you talk to, you might hear of like A tier, which might be Call of Duty, Halo, etc. And then some people might even put something like Overwatch in a B tier. And of course, if you're a fan who supports, you know, a title like Overwatch, which historically does have a larger male, which historically does skew more towards female fans, in particular, you know, again, that devalues their experience. But that doesn't, some people then associate it with being a lesser than title, which then makes it seem like the fans are lesser than. But again, like Overwatch was one of the first big titles to have loot boxes, and that then carried over across every other title that we know now. So it's really just how do we continue to leverage all of these different media and titles and franchises to bring people in, and less about like, did you have the same experience I did?
I am really glad you brought up imposter syndrome, and because that is something I do think affects women more than men in this industry. And, you know, in fact, being in a front-facing role like I am, I hear a lot of criticism. And, you know, one thing I've heard throughout my career is, oh, she only got the job because they wanted a woman on the broadcast kind of thing. And so to feel like you are just checking a box, and then to hear that, to see that laid out in those words is, you know, it's not a super easy thing to deal with. So it's very interesting to hear that it's kind of echoed in tech and gaming as well. So I'll share more, you know, kind of my answer, my story in a little bit. But of course, first, let's hear from Kat.
One challenge that I see facing women in esports and women in the tech and engineering fields, it's just the feeling that you have to prove yourself versus your peers from the opposite gender. There have been times where, you know, I've felt that I've had to try harder on a work or school project, or try harder to earn a promotion or raise, or even try harder in like a competition or a match versus other players. This is something that I've definitely felt during my time within the industry, and I feel like it's up to us to educate ourselves and become allies for our peers. I think the goal is to ensure that when we become future leaders or when we become future managers as we move up the chain, hopefully we can be that ally and be that change for future generations of women.
Excellent points. Completely agree there. And then for my kind of little answer to this, I think one, as I mentioned before, kind of feeling like you're just kind of checking a box for diversity, being inserted in a broadcast to be the only woman is kind of a little bit of a challenge. I mean, hey, at the end of the day, like at least I get a job out of it or whatever. But, again, to hear and to see someone criticizing you, trying to say, oh, well, that's the only reason you got that job is, not a super fun thing. And I think another thing I would bring up is, especially, again, being someone who does a lot of like public speaking and front facing roles and stuff like that, is having my knowledge, experience, etc. kind of questioned when I don't feel like a man in my position would necessarily have his experience and such questioned like that. I know this is something that, I didn't really work in tech for, it was less than a year really. And I wasn't really working in a programming role or whatever. But I've heard from a lot of other women in tech positions say that their experience has been questioned, or, they'll kind of get a lot of like, well, are you sure? And things like that their male colleagues don't necessarily get. And I've experienced a little bit of that in esports and gaming as well. I remember one time I was hired for a broadcast, and they specifically wanted a male and a female co-host. So again, in some ways it's kind of like, okay, well, I am slotted in to be the token female. And then when we show up for rehearsal, the producer and the director were only talking to my male co-host. They were running us through the run of the show, and they were telling us about the sponsor call outs and, just how the segments were going to work and everything that you go over in rehearsal. And they were just kind of looking at my male co-host the entire time and didn't really make eye contact with me even once. And so that's kind of one of those things where, it's hard to specifically say, well, this person acted in a manner that was misogynistic, but it's more about the experience that you have as a woman, knowing that you are experiencing sexism. And I think the other thing I would also add on to this is that when we sometimes, as women in the industry, describe our experiences experiencing sexism, those experiences are also kind of questioned. And people will say, well, are you sure? That doesn't sound like sexism to me. And it's kind of like, well, right there. You're literally just kind of invalidating my whole opinion and my whole experience. And these are things that I have gone through and that have happened to me that I can say, yes, that was a sexist thing that happened. But so yeah, I imagine in tech, there's a whole lot of that going on as well. So, but let's move on to happier topics, because the next question is how the theme of WE21 is Aspire to Inspire. So what motivates each of you to create a more inclusive industry in your role? This is kind of a question that we've answered a little bit. So if you guys don't necessarily have a specific answer, that's okay. You can say that. But is there anything specifically that does really inspire you to create a more inclusive industry here? Dominique, you can go first.
Yeah. So for me, two things come to mind. One is, as I mentioned, when I first got into esports, I didn't necessarily have someone to look up to right away, and I didn't really know what my pathway in was. So really showing people that there are many different ways to get into esports, and that it's not one be all end all, right? Just like people, your journey is going to change over time, what you like and dislike, where you work. You might leave esports for a bit and come back. And I think the other thing that really inspires me is knowing that you don't have to be in the biggest role to inspire others. That sometimes how you inspire others is not even by aspiring to do it, that sometimes it just naturally comes from being yourself and helping others, and just showing up in this industry is at least half the battle. As women, we get put through the ringer all the time, right? Like you said, we're either ignored or we're treated differently than our male coworkers. And I think a lot of people don't expect us to really stand our ground and to dig our feet in and to come back every day. So to show up and to lead just by being yourself, that's really the kind of leader I want to be. And I hope that other people really have that opportunity to be themselves in a cool space like this.
Awesome answer. Helena?
My inspiration has to be like 17-year-old Helena. Like it has to be that bright-eyed, ready to dominate the world, girl who's trying to break into the industry. Because there's so many barriers, as a woman. But on top of that, there's going to be natural barriers. Like when I was in college, my college actually disabled games off of Wi-Fi. So there were already struggles of even being in the industry, let alone, male gatekeeping. So how now, in my role, can I help 17-year-old Helena? And that's kind of the attitude there. How can I create, co-ed tournaments that 17-year-old Helena would play in? How can I create women's scholarships that 17-year-old Helena would apply to? How can I hire somebody like as an intern like 17-year-old Helena? And that's kind of, the thought process through all of these things is you're going to have so many obstacles in tech. You're going to have so many obstacles in engineering, so many obstacles in gaming that are already going to be there and natural. There's already going to tell you people that are going to tell you that gaming is stupid or that this is stupid. And so I would let's throw male gatekeeping into the mix, and it's just almost impossible. So how can we smooth that road for the people who come after us is sort of my inspiration.
I really love that. That is so cool because that's something, we've kind of, I think there's some sort of quote that's like, be somebody that, your younger self would be proud of. And so that's really inspiring to just see you doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I would want to talk to me now when I was 17. I would want to talk to Sierra now when I was 17, or Dom or Jess. And you know what I mean? Like I would want that advice and that mentorship. And I would want them to tell me that I'm not an imposter, that I don't have imposter syndrome, that I'm 17 and I'm just starting out. Like those are the types of conversations I think that are so needed. So.
What motivates me, I think, is the passion coming from this incoming generation of students that want to make a difference and build a future for everyone. Every student that I'm currently working with, as well as my peers, have an insane passion to want to pursue diversified careers within the esports industry. And, they also have, this generation also has a very strong will to create impactful change for not only themselves, but for future generations as well. The movement that I've been seeing recently towards providing valuable opportunities for everyone in this space, like in this industry, it's a very motivational feeling on my end, and it inspires myself to be an ally towards everyone, and a strong will to want to provide a more safe and inclusive space as someone within collegiate esports in the tech industry.
So my daily inspiration is actually this anecdote that I kind of remind myself a lot of times. So if you were to walk into a room of, say, elementary school kids right now and ask who plays Fortnite, you get a bunch, everybody raises their hand. But if you said, who is a gamer? Most of the boys will raise their hand, and likely not a lot of the girls will raise their hand. I want that to change. That is like the biggest why I have right now of waking up and doing what I do, is I want that to change. It absolutely drives me crazy that there's this connotation of the word gamer that girls and non-binary individuals don't identify with. And if I can, through talks like this and getting to know all of you awesome ladies and, talking about our stories and sharing our stories and showing a little bit more of what goes on behind the scenes in a role like mine. I know a lot of you are a little more camera facing and stuff, but if we can continue to share our stories and share our career paths and our journeys and how we got there, then maybe there's one girl in that room who's like, know what? I am a gamer, and raises her hand. And then the next time there'll be a few more girls, and we can slowly start to change that, because they are gamers. They play Fortnite. They play a million other games out there right now. And it's changing that connotation and kind of taking back the power of being a gamer or being an esports competitor. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, what race you are, what ethnicity you are, what your socioeconomic background is. You can be a gamer, and you are a gamer. And I really, really want that to change. And knowing that the tournaments, the work that I do every day, a lot of the diversity and inclusion work that we do at Intel, and continuing to work with students who are coming into this space and making it a little bit easier for them to move into collegiate esports. Like, all of that is really driven from that why and that kind of inspiration. Because I remember when I was a kid, seeing a woman who was an engineer. And I think another really important thing that we often forget is that if you're an engineer, the basis of your job is solving problems. in gaming and esports, we got a lot of problems you can help us solve. Technical, non-technical, systematic, operational, whatever they may be, whatever type of problem you like to solve, you can have a career here. And so if you have that passion of gaming and esports, of competition, I actually had a lot of competition background growing up. I raced my bike competitively, and then coming into the esports space is a fun intersection of like that competitive background that I have, but bringing it into gaming. And if you have those passions, there will be a career for you here. All of us, we hope that this panel and hearing our stories and everything continues to inspire you. And then if you can, reach out to somebody as well who may find this inspirational. And it's that network, it's that community that we have together that will just keep lifting each other up. And we're going to we already are fundamentally changing this industry, and we're just going to keep doing it.
Beautiful answer. I completely agree. And then for my answer as well, I kind of have to echo a lot of the same sentiments that these other ladies have shared, which is, I just really want to create a more friendly place for the next generation. I guess as an anecdote from my childhood, I remember when I was in elementary school, a lot of my friends, I had a core group of girlfriends, and we all played N64 games together. I remember specifically, we went over to one of my friend's houses, and it was her birthday party, and we played Mario Kart and Mario Party, and we just had a blast. And then the next year, we got into middle school, and all of a sudden, it was as if these girls just wanted nothing to do with gaming. And I have to assume it was some weird pressure from like a societal pressure of like, oh, girls don't play games, or like boys don't like girls who play games, or something like that. Because all of a sudden, I would like show up to school and try to talk to them about like video games and Pokemon and Sailor Moon and like nerdy stuff. And they just were not having it. They, I would be going off about GoldenEye, and they would act like they didn't know what that was. And it was just very weird. And so I just want to create a generation where like girls don't have to feel, and I think we're moving in that direction. But I mean, Sierra, that's I think the anecdote that kind of brought me back to reality and made me think, oh, we still have so much work to do, that these girls are hesitant to call themselves gamers, either for fear that there will be backlash, of, oh, well, you're not a real gamer, you don't deserve that label, or because it's uncool, or for whatever reason. I don't want anyone to have to feel like they can't call themselves a gamer, because they don't fit the qualifications or what have you. But let's go ahead and move on. Something we've touched on quite a lot throughout this panel is the importance of networking, the importance of building your community, building your network. And so I guess I want to ask next how you guys have done that. What is the importance of networking, how you have built your community within your role, and, why it's so important, especially kind of to lean on other women in esports and gaming. And Dominique, let's start with you.
So I think networking is extremely important. As an ex-recruiter, kind of comes with the territory. But on a from a more personal perspective, as I mentioned earlier, networking is how I got my first opportunity in esports. And actually, every career opportunity I've had in the last 8-9 years has come through my network. Obviously, I've been very qualified for all of my opportunities, but the fact that I heard about those opportunities either before they went on to market, or I knew someone internally who could refer me to the hiring manager, or even just give me insight on what the hiring manager was looking for or the process. That's all information that is extremely valuable in, when you're applying, especially in a niche role like esports, where it looks really cool and it sounds really cool and everyone wants to be here, right? It's even more important in this space, and I would argue even in tech, to make yourself stand out. So for me, I really built my network in a couple of ways. One was doing a lot of just the legwork and figuring out who the key players were in the communities, figuring out kind of what their role was, learning a little bit more about them. It can be a little bit harder, caveat, what is presented on social is not always perfectly aligned to the person, but it does give you an idea of ways you can reach out to the person, or ways that you can even just relate to them on a human level. I think that's a really important one when you're building your network, is like recognizing that if you send a cold DM on Twitter in 2013 like I did, that will be very differently received then than it might be now. And I think the other part, and we kind of touched on this in the question, is having women in this industry that you can lean on as part of your network, whether it's on a professional level, a personal or social level. Um, it's really scary. It is really scary to try and make a difference and to put yourself out there every day. It's very exhausting and tiring emotionally, physically, spiritually, every way possible. So to have people that you can talk with and be able to be vulnerable and be yourself in a space where, like I said, you don't always feel like you can do that at first. That will often make or break your experience, and will ultimately, if you have that network early on, I think that is a very important key to success for you staying in an industry like tech or esports. I think if you don't have that support network, it is much lonelier and it's much harder to do. And I think that's even more important during COVID, during a time when most of us are work from home, or we're working in teams that are distributed across locations, right? I'm an account manager, and my team is primarily in Burbank, California, and Columbus, Ohio, but I have a team member in Cologne, and I have my boss in London, and we have a couple of folks elsewhere in the Midwest. So, having those people that you can relate to on a human level is really important, and just helping keep you grounded through this chaotic world of I don't even know what, but this chaotic world.
That was a great answer, Dominique. I really, really related to a lot of things you said. Like, it is scary out there, and I think I'll talk more, when it's kind of my chance to give my formal answer. But you really do need to have that support structure to lean on, just to share experiences with, to kind of, like I was saying before, tell other women about something you've gone through, and just have them say back to you, like, yeah, I've been through that. You're not crazy. That is a problem in this industry that we need to address. So I really loved what you had to say. And Helena, what is your answer?
When I competed and, went to MLG events, and networking was, part of the experience. But I think the people who saw, success were the people who sort of like memorized all the names, shook hands, like really went out of their way. Even though you're there to compete against each other, you have to have that in the back of your head that you're there, for a larger purpose, and you have to make sure that you're friendly to everybody, and you can't just get into competitor mode too quickly. And lucky for me, I kind of found my herd and found my pack of other women in gaming, and quickly had friendships that lasted over 10 years now. So I was really, really lucky just to find like-minded people. Additionally, I had a lot of male allies from my gaming center in Pittsburgh that would travel with me. So I was never really alone, at an event, and alone without people who I trusted implicitly. So that was always sort of like my safety blanket, is, traveling with my pack and with my herd through it all. And, the life of a player is so short. You really have to take advantage of that time. You're not going to be a competitive player for more than 10 years. It's just, it's not there. It's not in the cards. So a lot of people I competed against and with are still a part of my professional network. People who I've been on teams with and faced in competitions are now, managers at, Respawn or Astro or what have you. It's still sort of a small community, and just making sure that any sort of event that you go to, you always, have that in mind, that you're there for a larger purpose, even, if it's not just competing.
That was a great answer, Helena. I really especially loved how you mentioned, like, you're only competitors on the sticks in the game. Outside of that, like, you are going to see these people again. You are going to work with them again. It's a small industry. So I loved that answer. Sierra, you're up next.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways I've actually built my network has just been kind of saying yes and. So if an opportunity comes up, it's like, yes, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to make sure I talk to 3 people that I don't know. or yes, I'm going to go to Society of Women Engineers, go to WE, and I'm going to attend every session that I possibly can, go to the networking dinners, try to take advantage basically of the opportunities that come, because you really never know where you're going to meet your next friend, where you're going to meet your next connection, your next advocate, somebody who will really help move your career forward. And there's something so incredible, I think, about attending women-focused events, or for those of us that may, not be as equally represented in the industries that we're in, and attending an event specific to that. I know whenever I attend SWE or WE in particular, there's just this feeling of like walking in the room and seeing majority women or, non-binary individuals and being like, I'm home. That kind of like moment of like, yes, these are my people. We can have, conversations and really being able to like be your authentic self and talk about the issues that, may be specific to you. That's where, attending these events, even though this is virtual, SWE has an incredible mentor network that you can always take advantage of. And it's a great way to connect with people. And don't be afraid of making connections outside of your industry too. Some of the best advocates for my career have no idea what gaming and esports is, or are just kind of on the peripherals. And so as you build your network within your industry, people can always be connected. And the amazing thing about our industry is that it is such a small world. Like once Helena and I met, we realized we knew 15 other people that we had in common. And then, through Helena, I've gotten to meet Dom and Jess, and I met Kat through another work thing. And so now it's like, wow, there's an extra, incredible 4 women that I have in my support network now, just through 1 or 2, meetings, and then continuing those conversations. So, don't be afraid to reach out, check in on people, especially in this kind of crazy virtual world, have informal virtual coffee chats and everything. But it's a much smaller world than you kind of realize. And everybody is really there to support you and kind of help you along.
Thank you so much for attending our panel here today. Your time, your attention, and your participation is so appreciated. Please utilize this as an opportunity to take in as much as you can. There are presentations, there are inspirational insight sessions, keynotes, and the networking lounge, and they're all there to make you better, both in and out of work. So please aspire to inspire and enjoy WE21. Hopefully I will see you all in person in years to come. And before we do close, we are going to show a QR code on the screen. If you could please scan that code and take the survey that it takes you to, that would greatly help us put on an even better panel for you in the future at WE 2022, hopefully. See you next year.